Welcome, football fans. Buckle up for another hard-hitting episode of Player 54 Podcast, an independent show focused solely on alternative and opportunity football. From a sunny Southwest Florida studio, here is your host, Michael Lathrop.
Hello, football fans. This is episode 121, More Football in San Antonio. We are living during unprecedented times. The alternative football landscape is full of opportunities for players to pursue their dream of playing professional football. Whether it be the traditional 11v11 outdoor game or variations of the arena indoor and even flag football, there seems to be an avenue for everyone who is dedicated to making that dream become a reality. These leagues and teams are great for aspiring players, coaches, and staff members. Since the show's return, the episodes have had a heavy dose of International Football Alliance, seeing that we've had Ivory Durham and Manny Matsakis making appearances. For those of you who have remained loyal, and I assure you, in due time, we will get back around to the guest affiliated with the United Football League. However, for the time being, I feel the UFL has stable ownership and the foundation as good as one could expect at this stage in any young professional football league, which allows me to focus on introducing other leagues in the football ecosystem. That being said, there are plenty of football developments to cover. In addition, this week, San Antonio Caballeros offensive coordinator and assistant general manager Stan Bedwell joins the show to discuss the International Football Alliance and his team's progression. But first, we have those football developments to cover. So, let's get to it.
Did you hear the news? Did you hear the news?
On October 10th, the Arena League announced the addition of expansion teams Hot Springs Wise Guys and Eau Claire. The league also revealed its 2025 schedule, which kicks off on Friday, May 30th, with the Iowa Woo hosting the Duluth Harbor Monsters. The regular season will consist of 6 teams with 8 games per team spanning over 9 weeks that will wrap up on Saturday, July 26th. On October 28th, the Professional Arena Independent Association announced inaugural members South Carolina Ravens and Southern Scream. On November 14th, the International Football Alliance announced 2 league combines, the first on January 18th at DeSoto High School in Dallas, Texas, and the second on January 25th in Mexico. On November 15th, AF1 announced the Arizona Bandits as a member for the 2025 season. On November 17th, the Canadian Football League held its 111th Grey Cup at BC Place in Vancouver, British Columbia, with the Toronto Argonauts winning its 19th Grey Cup, defeating the Winnipeg Blue Bombers 41-24. On November 18th, the AF1 announced its participating teams for the 2025 season and its divisional alignment. The East Division includes the Albany Firebirds, Nashville Cats, Orlando Predators, and Wilkes-Barre. The Central Division includes Corpus Christi Tritons, Salina Liberty, Southwest Kansas Storm, and Wichita Regulators. The West Division includes Arizona Bandits, Billings Outlaws, Oregon Lightning, and Washington Wolfpack. The league also announced the Monterey Kings and Stockton Crusaders informed the AF1 of their intention to delay their entry until the 2026 season. On November 19th, AF1 released its 2025 schedule featuring 12 teams during a live stream on its social media platforms. The season will kick off on March 14th with the Orlando Predators hosting the Albany Firebirds, and the regular season concludes on June 15th. The unveiling was done as weekly matchups, including buys. Per the stream's graphic, each week stated Friday, Saturday, and Sunday dates. Game times and specific dates will be announced at a later date. Also on November 19th, the Professional Arena Independent Association announced the addition of the Dallas Falcons and Knoxville Bandits as travel teams for the 2025 season. As I have previously mentioned, we will now be joined by San Antonio Caballeros offensive coordinator and assistant general manager Stan Bedwell to discuss the organization and its latest developments. Welcome, Stan. I appreciate you taking the time to appear on the show to discuss the San Antonio Caballeros. I always butcher it, but I hope I got it right. Caballeros and your roles with the organization. How is it?
You got to put the B first. Think of like Cowboys, Caballeros.
Arrows. Okay. All right. I'll work on that. And
It's
everyone, my
okay.
listeners,
We're all still learning. I just had to say it on other recruiting calls, so I've said it enough that I got it down now.
all right. Well, you learn something new every day. That
I'm
is
I'm,
no
I'm
joke.
bilingual now.
Awesome. That's something I need to work on, no doubt. Well, so welcome. It means a lot to have you on here as we're kind of going down this new IFA journey. And I know a lot of people are just learning about it. A lot of people haven't heard about it. So this is all new. And some people probably think I'm going nuts on this IFA kick. But I think it's important because it's new, it's something different. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
No, excited to be here and happy to answer any questions you have about it.
Awesome. So before we go down that IFA San Antonio rabbit hole, so to speak, I think it's important to kind of give those tuning in an idea what your back story involves, right? To have a better understanding of how
Right.
you got here, what you're bringing to the table. Just some light research I did. Obviously, didn't pull up your full resume or anything, but I mean, you have an array of experience. I mean, you obviously played quarterback in college, you played in the spring league, you played over in the Italian football league, all before eventually transitioning into the coaching ranks, which I've seen in various collegiate and obviously now professionally. So, I mean, I'll give you your soapbox, and that way you can paint your picture better than I am, you know, just throwing paint at this painting. So, why don't you really paint your picture and share your backstory a little bit so people have a better understanding of you?
Yeah, so originally from a small town in Arkansas. Growing up through high school, baseball was my main sport. Played baseball for 3 years in college, and then when I guess I saw that I wasn't going to go pro in baseball, I decided to go play a year of college football because my goal had always been to coach football at the end of the day. And so I went up to a small school in North Dakota, played for a year. Our coach there had some experience in Europe, so he got me connected with some people over there, and I ended up playing every year in Europe from 2006 to 2019. And I came back from about 2008. From 2008 to 2019, I came back and coached college ball, I think 7 of those years, because usually we play spring and summer in Europe. Um, had a really successful career in Europe, won a lot of championships, did a lot of good things. One of those years that I came back was in 2015. I spoke at the AFCA convention about European football, and I met Coach Mummy at the convention, and we had spoke several times in the past. And he was interested in my story and asked me to come on to his XM radio show. So we went and re-recorded that at his hotel, and then he asked me to stay for dinner. And then the net and he watched my speech at the FCA, and then he offered me a job at Belhaven University where he was at that time. So since 2015, I've been connected with Coach Mummy in one way or another. After 2000, I guess 2019 happened, or after the 2019 season in Europe, last year I played over there. Uh, I planned to came back coach college ball, then I planned to go back in 20, but COVID happened. So I ended up coaching at a 4-year university in Indiana for the short fall season and a few games in the spring. You know, everybody just kind of put together games however they could at that time. And then Coach Mummy called me in the spring of 21 and asked if I wanted to come be the backup quarterback and help coach the offense in the spring league. So I went and worked with him there. And pretty much since then, I coached out of college that fall, at a junior college in Minnesota that fall after the spring league. But I've done high school football and mostly consulting with high school and college staffs all over the country over the last 3 years teaching their read. But Coach Mommy, pretty much since we finished the spring league, not long after, he's been working on the IFA with Jason Adams, the owner of the league, and so it's something that I've seen him put, you know, in a way you could say, 3 of the last kind of prime years that he's not a young guy anymore. And so I've seen him kind of put his career on hold for this league to happen. And I've seen him get offers from other, professional spring leagues, things like that to coach. And he has held off because he believes in this and he's put so much time in it. So, yeah, I've been with him basically through that journey, doing all I could, helping with different social media things. And Coach Mommy doesn't do a lot of social media. There's a few of us coaches that help him out with that stuff. Um, but doing that, then whenever we got the team, doing social media for the team and things like that. And yeah, I'll be running the offense, and I have the title of assistant GM. So pretty much what I've been doing for the most part is more on the player personnel side of you know recruiting players, signing players, staying in touch with them. And I mean, it's a pretty tough thing when you're signing guys in August or September for a league that's going to start in May, when there's so many other opportunities that are available. So, you got to be pretty relaxed with what their goals are too. And if there's something else that, maybe a guy signs with you, but he feels like this other league or he has this other opportunity that's better for him, to at the end of the day, what this league is. And I guess you might have questions on that. You probably heard it from some other people, but at least to me, this league is we think of it as like a double A professional football league. There's no, when you hear minor leagues in baseball, you're like, oh, that's professional baseball. When you hear, minor league football, it's usually thought of more as like semi-pro.
Right.
And there's a pretty bad stigma that goes along with that. And so we wanted to be a true professional minor league that, if we see ourselves as double A, then we see like the UFL and CFL as triple A. And then, obviously the NFL is the majors. So we wanted to kind of be a bridge between indoor and arena football or European football and, the UFL, CFL, where you're actually starting to make really good money playing the sport. And, we don't kid ourselves with what we are. We're not trying to compete with the UFL or things like that. We just want to give the players a 11 on 11 outdoor professional league to play in, to showcase what they can do with high level coaching and the connections that the coaches have to try to get those guys moved on to the league where they can actually make a living playing the sport.
So there's a lot of questions out there, not necessarily that are
Yeah.
mine, but I mean, I get it from people that haven't heard of the league, and I'm sharing things for the first time, and there's stigmas. It's not just the IFA, branding. There's so much history in this space of spring football, alternative football, even if you look into the indoor arena space. And I think that's where that stigma, where it's looked more as semi-pro ball and not your triple A, double A
Mm-hmm.
scenario that we are accustomed to with baseball and even with minor league hockey and whatnot. Like, so I think that stigma isn't looked so much in those sports because those leagues have been established for so long and there hasn't been really the horror stories of things halting mid-season, players getting stranded, and I'm not saying that's the IFA, but I understand that
Yeah.
that's the stigma and that's the concern and that's history is something that a league at some point, whether it's the IFA, the UFL, whoever, somebody's got to break that stigma. Somebody's got to
Yeah.
prove that to be wrong to, I think, essentially establish this triple A, double A, and buy-in from people. So, I mean, that's not what we're here for. I mean, I get it. But you mentioned there's so many opportunities, right? It is the new age of football here, stateside at least. And even if you look internationally, how, Europe is, not only do certain nations have their own leagues, but how the ELF is really taken off. And then we see this league that's looking at a more international. We see the National Football, League playing more and more
Mm-hmm.
games abroad. So, I mean, obviously the opportunities are all over the place. We see flag football is coming to the Olympics, the next summer
Yeah.
games and stuff. So like, it's just, the game is growing in some capacity and it's it's a new age. So with that, players do have a lot of opportunity. So
And,
with players, that also means coaches, Stan, like yourself. So you kind of alluded to something. So I'm going to peel back that curtain a little bit, if we may. Um,
yeah.
you had been linked with Coach Bummy for years, since I believe you
Mhm.
said 2015. And so you've kind of been on this journey a little bit with him, but how did this IFA San Antonio, when did that really present itself for you to start turning the page and start focusing on that? How did that come about? Obviously, it must have been Coach Mummy. It was
Yeah.
probably a big part of that. But can you just kind of share with us how that came about?
I mean, for me personally, it's always been, Jason is, I think, Jason Adams, the league owner, he's vetted so many, and I think that's one thing. If we, as Donald Trump says here, we might do the weave or whatever a little bit, go around. But you know, he Jason Adams, when they first put out, like the teams that were going to be in the league, you can see that's dramatically changed. And I think that's something that a lot of people see is okay, that's red flags of the league. But what Jason has done for the last 2.5 years, he's traveled the country and he's met with people, he's found teams, he's made deals. There's obviously obligations that each team has to fulfill financially to be in the league. And just a lot of the teams that deals are made with, when there's monthly fees or things like that, they weren't coming through with the things, or some of them just stopped communication, after months of working together. So, I mean, I think it's a bit different from some of these leagues where I know, like, say, like the USFL, they were owned by one entity and then they hired all the coaches and it was all in this one big bubble where this is all individually owned. I mean, it's something that's tough that you got to find people that have the money that are in it for the right reasons. I think a guy like you spoke with Manny Matsakis, I would think
Yeah.
Manny's like a godsend for the league because he's got everything together and he's got Val Gunn there helping him as VPO now and they're both phenomenal. And they're going to do great things there. And I think it's just getting in the right people that are doing it for the right reasons, which ultimately is not about how much money you can put in your pocket. It's giving the players opportunities and you getting, whatever comes from that, if you're wanting to look at it from a personal level. So, for us initially, um, Coach Mummy was going to be coaching a team in Mexico. I mean, from the beginning, I was going to go with Mummy wherever he went. So it hasn't been like a thing of, oh, he got a job then in San Antonio and he calls me, he's like, hey, well, do you want to come to San Antonio with me? It's kind of been I'm not going to say like a 50-50 team effort, but I've kind of been the sidekick in it, helping out however I can with Coach Mummy. And, we talk daily. We've had for years. So it's always been, where are we going to go? And it's been two different places in Mexico we were looking initially. Then we thought we might have Dallas, and then we kind of got to a lull where some of these teams fell out that we had talked to, and then we were like, okay, well, I don't know where we're going to go, where if we're going to have a team, and then when the San Antonio franchise came up, Coach Mummy's from the area. They asked him to run the team, and so he was like, okay, we're going to San Antonio. And I mean, I was down there for the AFCA convention a few years ago. It's the only time I've been in San Antonio, but it's a. But I think I would rather be in the States right now as a whole over. I mean, I've enjoyed Mexico the little bit I've been down there, but just as a preference, I'd rather be in the States. And my family's from the border of Arkansas and Texas, Texarkana. So for me, it's not terribly far away from home. It's a half a day's drive. So and that's maybe a chance. My brother lives in Ennis, Texas, outside of Dallas, which 3 or 4 hours. So it kind of gives a chance that I'm a little bit closer to family too. So for me, I mean, I'd follow Coach Mummy wherever he went. But, you know, the fact that it happens to be a big, unless it was like a franchise in Little Rock or something, I mean, or Dallas, I'm about as happy as I could be with the location. And, we're just excited to hit the ground running being San Antonio's team where, I mean, right now you've got the Brahmas that did a great job in the UFL, but at least to my knowledge, UFL is still. I think they're all still going to be practicing and living in Dallas or Arlington
That's
this year,
that's the word, right? Nothing's changed on
and
that front as of yet.
so I mean, I think that while they're obviously a big name there and they drew good crowds, and I mean they always have a great program. Like the one thing there they're not there during the week, and so what we're hoping that we can have is a bit more of a community relationship, community involvement, and I'm sure the tickets are going to be probably a bit more affordable. And I say we're not trying to compete with the Brahmas or you know be better than the Brahmas. What we're trying to do something completely different. We just want to really integrate within the community, and we've signed a ton of guys that are from San Antonio or played at Incarnate Word or you know UTSA. So we want to have that local feel, and I think close to probably over half of the guys we have. I haven't really just counted it out. I got the list here, but probably close to half are either from Texas or play college ball in Texas, if not more.
Yeah, I've seen several signings. So I mean, I don't want to get into each player signing. I
Mhm.
you're in a unique space, all right? We've seen leagues keep coming, and there's always a starting point. But this you got a lot of lead up here in a case
Mhm.
that the XFL, USFL, now UFL didn't have when they initially launched. Sometimes the decisions came, and by the time they got pieces moving, the draft has been announced to be in March, so we got plenty of time there, but nothing was like waiting for drafting of players to start putting together the rosters. Teams such as San Antonio have been out doing a bunch of mini camp invites and workouts and stuff like that. So obviously things have been well underway for quite some time. Could you kind of share with people when that process really started for you guys on the player front? I mean, you might have been sitting down talking with Coach Mummy and identifying the players that fit the air raid. Obviously, he's the air raid guy, and you're an air
Yeah.
raid guru yourself. So I mean, but when did the process really start? When did you really start putting out invites and doing workouts and kind of go down that way? Because we see a lot of teams kind of moving the mini camp route, and we see some teams like Manny Matt Sachs's Ohio Valley Ironmen that are behind because they got announced late, but before they can even start moving there. So can you kind of share where San Antonio has been in that process and kind of where and catch us up to where we might be today?
I mean, we started. I guess it was in the early summer. It's kind of when we got the leeway because initially a year and a half ago or so, it was all talked about everything being a draft, and I know me and Coach Mummy weren't really excited about that because a lot of times, especially like at a league of this level, you just want to go get your own players. Guys that that have played with you before, or for us, for example, we've signed a lot of receivers that played in different, that played for maybe Dana Holgerson or like West Virginia or Texas Tech, and guys that have some kind of experience with coaches that have been in the system. So just so there's a little bit of familiarity because you only get 2 weeks of training camp before you get started. So that was something that was pretty important for us. So, we were always among the like we were kind of on the side of we just want to go signing our own guys because we know we have good connections and with Coach Mummy's name, there's a chance to bring in guys that want to play in, the original air raid offense. So we started back in I believe it was June. It might have been May. Our first signing was Joseph Putu, a defensive back and he's an international. Um, but he played for me. I recruited him out of high school to a junior college in North Dakota to play receiver for me. And I mean, big athletic guy. He came in and he was okay, but after 2 or 3 games, he was like third string. But we thought when we needed help in the secondary, and we're like, man, you could really be a stud at DB. And I think he hated us at the time. But the next year he was All American there, and then ended up he committed to Arkansas, which made me happy because I'm a diehard Razorback. But then he flipped to Florida, and played a few years at Florida, and since then he's went from NFL camps to the Fan Control League, the USFL, and like the Spring League was really cool because I got to play against him. And we're living in the same hub, and him and a linebacker that I coached at the same JUCO. They were both on the same. They were both on the Alphas there, and so it was really cool to connect with two guys that 7 years before I coached at a JUCO, and now I've got pads on playing against them. So that was a blast. But he was our first player, and again, that was just a personal connection thing. Quarterback Nate Hayden out of Presbyterian and Southeastern in Florida was another one. He's a Texas kid that he coached after the spring league when I went to Minnesota and coached at the JUCO. He was our quarterback there. Was an All-American for us there, and that's another kid that we knows the system, that's young and is talented, and um, we had a list of about 20 guys that were on the lineman roster for us in the spring league. And one thing Coach Mummy had told all the guys, one thing he says often is, we want to get the band back together. And so, we thought originally after the spring league, until they announced, like, I guess certain people in high positions within the league, we had been promised a job in the USFL. And so they had actually told like Coach Mummy to keep his staff to hold out from other jobs because we were going to go to the USFL. And all the way until November, or until about Thanksgiving of 21, we thought we were going to USFL. And then he got the call that they'd hired some people and there were some changes and we didn't have a job anymore. But, he had promised like all the players, like, I'll do all I can to sign all of you. And he's a very loyal guy. And so, as soon as this was all settled, he's like, well, go find who all's still playing, because we have maybe some linemen that were 300 pounds then that are 200 pounds now, or, whatever, working in finance or something like that. But
Right.
he's like, find the guy. And then there's some that are playing in that AAA or majors level too. There's some that made it. And he's like, go find the guys that are still playing and still in playing shape even, that was with us, and offer him a contract. And the same thing, Tom Mason, our defensive coordinator, was our defensive coordinator in the spring league. So I mean, again, he's very loyal to the sense of he wants to get the group back together. And I think we have we have our Trey Minner from South Alabama. He led the spring league in rushing. We got him back, and that's something that's always fun when we talk. They're like, "You had the leading rusher running the air raid." Yeah, we did. Uh, and the leading passer and the leading receiver too. But I digress. We have a couple of receivers that we had in the spring league. We have 4 or 5 on defense, and so yeah, that was a priority for us, was to go after those guys, and then from there it was more of a look. You know, camps are tough. You do training, or you do like tryout camps, and those are really tough because I think for a lot of leagues and a lot of teams, it's just a money grab. It's a way that you can pay fees you need to pay, or pay, you know, maybe your coaches, things like that. And I mean, what I've found is any tryout camp I go to, even if you really impress me, I'm still going to say, well, show me film. You know,
Right.
that's something that I need to see. Now, there's some that maybe I've seen film and I just want to see in person. Okay, their film was great from 3 years ago. How does he look now? How does he pass the eye test?
Well, a lot can
How do
change in 3 years, right,
it
Stan? I
can it
mean, yeah,
can, and that's a tough thing from like indoor ball, and that's why I think you don't see a ton of guys. I mean, I think if you look indoor ball to professional kickers, I think it's a great thing. I mean, they have to kick in like such the field goal posts are so small. They're so narrow and like indoor ball. That's crazy. So I think for kickers, there's a good path to go from indoor to professional. For linemen, it's tough because they pretty much just do one-on-ones the whole time. So you don't really see them having to pick up a lot of twists and stunts and make calls and things like that. It's pretty repetitive there. Then for the DBs, they have to cover far less space. And it just doesn't translate a lot. So like I was actually talking with one of the head coaches in the IFA yesterday on the phone, and we were talking about that we'll have a guy contact us as like I was 2-time all IFL or whatever like arena league the last 2 years I've dominated, and they'll send the film, and we were like we just don't watch indoor film. I'll say like, okay, cool, send me your college film from 4 years ago, and I'll evaluate more off of that. I mean, obviously, I know if you played indoor the last 2 years and you've done well, that you're still in good shape.
Right.
But I would still rather see you actually. So I mean, that is a good thing. I'm not saying it's having film and playing is better than nothing by far, but I want to see you move in space. I want to see you settle in versus zones, things like that. Um, you know, see you blocking on screens, which you probably don't, to my knowledge, you maybe don't see as much in indoor, and that's just maybe that's my ignorance because I haven't watched much of it. But there's just certain things that I want to see that's outdoors. So if a guy was a really good indoor player, I'm like, okay, I know you're still in shape, you're doing well. Let me see let me see what you're doing, like your outdoor film. Or that
Well,
might be a good one that I'm like, let me see you come to this tryout and let me see you running and see what you can do there.
probably shows a level of commitment too, right? I mean, you're still committed to the game. You're
Hmm.
balancing whatever you're doing, your personal life, trying to be a professional, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of guys that reach out to me all the time, and I'm not trying to act like I'm an agent or anything, but there's people that are always reaching out, trying to work whatever contacts I have, or just various bouncing things off me. And I'm always telling them like, playing's got to be better than not playing, right?
Yeah.
To close
100%.
any door on anything would be to be foolish, because now you're just sitting on a couch, and we hear it over and over again. Players saying, "I'm ready on a drop of a dime," but are you? Because if you're getting off the couch and you haven't been playing, and it's one thing to go train 2-3 days a week, and what
Yeah.
does that training look like? It's nothing to be put in, a team and have coaching and the training, and then even whatever that plan is, and you're conducting yourself in a professional manner. I mean, there's just
Hmm.
a lot more to it. So I get it, and I just don't. I know that you're not trying to, to discount anything, because you're
Oh
being
no, no,
honest.
not at
You're
all.
just, but at the same time, yeah, there's value there, and I tell people all the time, it's better than just going home
Oh,
and just sitting
absolutely.
and
I mean,
doing nothing. Yeah,
it's just a different. I mean, it's the same sport, but it's different. It's a
right,
different sport. It is a different sport, and it's the same way that if I had like I mean, obviously, football is closer than basketball is, but it's the same way if I have like some All-American basketball player that has a good build and he wants to, I'm like, oh, we should look at this guy because he's a good athlete. No, I'm not. I think indoor ball is great. I think it's exciting. I think it's fun. We've signed a ton of guys that played indoor last year, a ton. Probably half of our roster has played indoor ball. So no, by no means am I discounting it. I think that it's great, and it's just, like I say, it's different. And
right.
all of those guys that we've signed from indoor, what we go back to is looking at their college film usually, and that's just fits what we do. If it's what we're looking for, um, and that's another thing. I mean, being a new league, and I know that there's always question marks about is it even going to happen. You've seen what Major League Football, you've seen,
Right.
that didn't have, you've seen leagues that maybe started and folded a few games in. Um, last year the Arena League was quite bad, where you had different teams dropping out every week and schedules changing. And I do think that Fisher in control and having a full year to do that, it looks like I think that's going to be a really legitimate league and hopefully start to get back to what we knew of, like, AFL back in like in the past. I
Right.
think that's going to be really good this year. But yeah, you be in a new league, and we want to be a players' league. So I mean, that's when a guy signs a contract with our team, like for training camp. We tell them this is a contract within the IFA. So I mean, I'm sure you've seen it, whether it be our team or I think we've probably been the most active about pushing out the signings we made and things like that. But um, it's not uncommon to see a guy that we announce sign, and then a week later he announces that he's signed with an indoor team. And you know, there's been a few that we've signed that have just said like, "Yo, they're paying me so much money, I'm not going to leave there in May," because some of the indoor teams are paying a lot more than what we'll pay. And what we tell them is it's all about what you want in your career path. I think if the goal is to try to get back up to CFL, UFL, NFL, then playing outdoor ball is probably going to be your best chance to do that. Some guys just like playing indoor ball better. I mean, for some, it is a financial thing that this is a better way to take care of my family and pay the bills. For some, it's having the questions of, okay, is this league going to happen? How serious can I take it? So, I mean, we're very open with things. Some of the guys that have signed have just said, "Hey, they're paying me too much. I'm not going to come to training camp in May." Some have said, "Well, I'm signing with that team, but I'm signing with indoor, and I'm going to play for the first 3 or 4 games with them just to keep myself in shape, where I'll be ready in May for training camp." There's some that have said, "Well, I'm signing with them. I'll play with them, but if it looks like it's for sure happening, I'm going to leave to come there." And, our contract doesn't prohibit them from going to Europe or playing indoor, or, whatever the players want to do. We tell everybody you're not locked in.
Right.
You're not going to be able to play with another team in the IFA, but we're not trying to lock anybody down. We're not, we had one of our better defensive backs signed and two of our better D linemen signed that just said, "Hey, we just want to, we're going to do indoor ball and we're not coming to training camp." And, I says like, "Good luck. I hope it works out for you. No hard
Right.
feelings." And that's it. We're not, by no, we want to be a players league. We want to give guys opportunities. And if they're, if what they feel is best for them is something different, then we're completely fine with that.
Well, let's look at the players now. All right. So there's things you can control in the world, and there's things you can't. So now you're starting to get your roster together.
Mhm.
And I mean, I can't remember exactly the number off the top of my head, but you're in the 40 player realm that you're going to be carrying on an active roster,
Mhm.
right? So, I mean, how far are you? Do you think you're 50% to your rosters in place? I know you got the draft coming up, and you don't want to pigeonhole yourself in anything.
Yeah.
Where do you think you're at roster wise? I mean, you obviously probably have some more players that you're looking to offer and stuff, but where do you think you guys are at?
I mean, right now, us and I know at least a few other teams are. I mean, we're essentially, if you're looking, like 40 is the end point. I think I've heard of some teams are looking to sign almost 100 into camp. I think that's way too many. Um, most I've talked to have said around 75. We are a little over 60 signed right now. We're right around 61, 62. But the thing is, there's we know that if we got 62 signed right now, there's probably at least 10 of those that aren't even going to come. They're going to end up doing indoor or getting picked up by a higher league. Because I mean, we feel like we have some really, really good players that have a lot of experience in those leagues already. So, right now for us, we've been really slow. I mean, we're still putting out signings every few days, but we haven't signed anybody in 2 months. It's just getting around to announcing guys that have already been signed. Um, there's guys we're talking to. There's guys we like. There's guys, to be honest, that if we didn't have the number that we have signed now, we would have signed in a heartbeat. But right now, it's more of kind of keeping in touch with those guys. And okay, if we get just an absolute superstar that contacts us, a guy that we think, okay, he can be the guy at this spot, we're still going to take him. But we're just being really like kind of slow and selective, our team right now. And, talking to uh, another guy that's in operations in the league yesterday with the team that's not near as far along as we are, he's like, he said in April's a prime time. You're going to have all the UFL cuts. You're going to have guys that didn't get drafted. You're going to have guys that didn't get drafted that thought they were going to get drafted that are going to be looking. So, I mean, one thing that I think the thing that stood out to me the most through my experience with all of these like professional spring leagues and all my time in Europe and seeing players come over there and players go there now in all the plethora of indoor and arena leagues, there's never a shortage of talent. Like, I mean, I feel like the roster we put together now is a lot stronger probably than what we had when we won the spring league. But I do feel like right now, if all 60 of those guys just said, you know what, we're all going to do something different, we had to start from scratch, we could still build a championship level team because there's just so much talent out there. There's so many guys that are itching for a chance. And, when people look at it, I've had people ask me, like, well, were you excited that, from a personal standpoint, that the XFL and USFL combined, where it was less teams, which means more free agents? And I said, no. Like, I mean, honestly, I think I I hope like hell the UFL works for all the players and for all the coaches. I hope the IFA works, and I hope that three more of these leagues start up, and I hope that they all work because you could fill up three more leagues with phenomenal talent. It's everywhere. There's guys that are playing in the UFL or CFL that are or there's guys playing there that aren't near the level of tons of guys that are sitting at home right now. And it's just all about having the right people look at you, maybe people being open to the fact that you played at a small school. And instead, there's people that sign a guy just, oh, he played at University of Tennessee. What did he do? Oh, he had two special teams tackles in his career. And they'll take that over a Division II All-American that had 340 tackles. And it's like, so I think a lot of it in these leagues is for show. It's like, well, we signed the guy from this school or that school. And I mean, I think when I look at our roster, we're a very, very good mix of, we got guys from Alabama, we got guys from Florida, um, we got guys from powerhouse programs, but we also have a lot of guys from even some guys that had lackluster careers at Division threes, but they've kept with it and they've done well in indoor and things like that. And we see some value to them that, hey, this guy's, even though he's mid to late 20s, he's getting better. He's getting better. And there's some value that, he's played against those guys that did play at those big programs and he's held his own. And so, I mean, it's just, there's just so much talent out there and so many guys that deserve an opportunity. And, I know it's hard from a financial standpoint to get a league going and pay players, things like that. That's where I love the spring league. Like the whole premise of the spring league was players don't get paid. And I don't know if you knew about that or anything, but it wasn't like salaries. What, you got your housing, you got your meals, but what you got is a platform to truly showcase yourself. And I know at first that was more like just kind of training camps, but by that last year when we were in it, I mean, you're in a full-fledged league where you're playing 6 games. And then, we were lucky enough to get to go play in the championship game for a seventh game. But, you're being coached by professional coaches and you get to showcase yourself. And for our guys, all the games were on either Fox or FSN. So they were getting to play on pretty much any TV in the country that you wanted to turn it on to.
Right.
So, I mean, I think something that would be incredible would be like if you had like different variations of that in different areas of the country, and you go and you play for 2 months, and but you get seen and you get coached well. There's just so much talent, and I can't emphasize it enough when I say we could lose our whole roster now and build up another one and be really good. That's not a knock on any guy we've signed. We signed the
Well,
guys we
no,
signed for
it's
a reason. It's just
right.
there's
You
so
have
many
your
players now.
system. You have your system. You're signing players, like you said, get the band back together, so to speak, the best you can. I mean,
Yeah,
that helps to mitigate the lack of time that you're going to have when people come together. I mean, I know like
yeah,
Alabama's doing mini camps. I had Ivory Durham on, quarterback that they have
mm,
signed, and they're getting people together, and they get some of the guys that are working out together, and they're doing Zoom meetings and stuff like that. So, are you guys doing Zoom meetings? Do you have Zoom meetings planned? Do you have mini camps planned maybe after the first of the year? I know the holidays are a horrible time to try to bring some people
yeah.
together. I mean, the draft's not until March. I don't know what your guys' game plan. Maybe you don't want to let the cat out of the bag, and I understand that if that's the case. So I
Yeah,
mean,
no, it's fine. No, we haven't done any Zooms. I mean, we have different like we have like a group on WhatsApp, and we have different ways that we can communicate with the guys regularly. Um, but no, we haven't went that route. And I mean, what we do is so simple that it's like guys. I've had some guys been like, well, I want to make sure I can learn the offense between now and May. I'm like, you're gonna learn the offense in 3 days. That's why we won the spring league. Everybody else had NFL coaches, and they were 3 weeks into the season still learning their playbook. We install our offense in the first 3 days, and then we just rep it and add like slight variations. So for us, I mean, it's we tell everybody, and the guys that have been with us already know how simple it is, and it's almost in a way it's why we wanted to sign guys at all the at positions that pretty much at almost every position we have a guy that was with us before in some capacity, and they know how we do things, which is a bit different when it comes to practice. Like in the spring league, all the other teams are practicing 3 days out on the field and a walkthrough. We practice one day on the field and a walkthrough, and we just sit at the hotel for the other 2 days, and we'd like go walk through out in the parking lot or things like that. But Coach Mommy's mindset is if you're a professional, you don't need to work on tackling and blocking. You should know how to do that. We just want to mentally be sharp, and we want our legs to be fresh so that we're ready on game day. And I mean, it paid off in the last 6 games of the spring league. 5 of them, we were down double digits in the fourth quarter and came back and won every time. And so we were kind of mocked by the other teams, and I think maybe hated by some and probably envied by some that while they were out in a 98-degree heat in Indianapolis on the turf in the summer at noon, we're sitting around the hotel lobby watching TV and hanging out. So Coach Mummy's a different guy. He has different philosophy, but he believes in what he does and his way of doing things. And so we don't feel like there's a lot we got to teach guys between now and then. It's more about just keeping the communication with them. Knowing where they're at, knowing that they're still on board, and then we are discussing doing a few weekend mini camps in this starting in the spring, maybe around like March. And we're not necessarily going to push it even, if we do that, what we do, some of the ideas we discuss is instead of saying, hey, you know, you 60 guys come here this weekend and that weekend, it's going to be more of like, we might bring like 20 or 25 this time and 20 or 25 another time so we can do more like individual instruction and get to know all the guys a bit better personally too. And if you do some of those, maybe you see like maybe a player this signs sees like, there's only half the my position group here and I can't compete with this half and I know that guy and that guy are in the other half. So maybe for them they see it's not for me. And I was the man, you know, at whatever my indoor team last year, whatever, and they still haven't started. I'm just gonna go play there and probably make more money than I'm making here. And get back to the city that all my fans that know who I am. Or maybe there's some that we see and we're just like saying in the same boat. It's just like it's not, you know, you're welcome to, if we signed you into camp, we're not going to cut you from this, but it might be a difficult conversation where you just say like, hey, there's 10 guys at your position, four of them are here today. Three of the top guys we have ranked coming into this aren't even here. You know, you couldn't get off the line against this DB. Like, you know, are you sure you want to, do you want to work for 2 months and come back and show what you can do? Or do you want to, while it's still early enough, look at your other options? Maybe you want to go back to the team you played with in Europe last year. You
Right.
know? And so I think it's a good thing for everybody if we can do it in that way. I mean, and we got so many guys that are in Texas that, we've talked like, well, we could just have like a Texas camp basically and have the guys that are in Texas come or close by in Texas come and just say anybody else that wants to join, you can. But, we won't do anything that's mandatory until May 15th when we start the official training camp. But if there's things we can do to get the guys together to work out some and get our eyes on them, then I think we're going to do that. That's something we're leaning towards.
So you have the playing experience in Europe, right, in
Mhm.
Italy, and there's that
Oh,
international.
I played in 11 countries in Europe.
Okay, like I said, I didn't do a deep dive, but I know that you played and you did well in Italy. So that's why I'm kind of hanging my head on that. But there's this international element. Obviously, there's a team in
Mhm.
Mexico. This is supposed to be, but there's also going to be the international element of the roster. There's going to be X amount of players, and with it being a limited roster, right? Not an NFL active
Mhm.
53 player roster. So now you can't really hide the players that well. They're going to have to be really involved in this. With that international element, you playing internationally. I know Coach Bryles coached, I believe, in Italy for
Yeah, you did.
a moment, but it's not necessarily the case for all, each of the teams. So does that give you a leg up on the international talent, so to speak, having a better understanding of what different leagues, what type of players would fit the air raid, like the system that you guys are looking to operate? I mean, I don't want to say that makes you a shoe in stand, but
Yeah.
do you feel like you got a leg up? Do you feel like you got a good avenue there internationally to supplement the things that you and Coach Mummy are looking to do?
I think the only thing that it really probably helps me is that I have a better understanding of what you're getting from international guys. I think for most Europeans, let's kind of stick with that because that's where most of my experience is. I can't really talk on like Brazil or Mexican guys too that much. But like in Europe, one thing that I've seen is that there's hardly any European that's playing in Europe that this is what they do for a living. Even the best of the best there are probably getting up, taking the kids to school, going and doing their engineering job or whatever it may be, working for 10 hours straight, 9 hours, and then getting off work, coming to practice, maybe showing up late because of their job or because they had to drop the kid off somewhere else or pick them up and or maybe leaving early because they got to put the kids to bed. There's just so many things. And so you see these European players that are very talented, but I haven't seen any that when they come from Europe to the States that didn't just blossom because now they can focus on football, especially seeing guys that I would play against. Maybe like there's some receivers, for example, I can remember playing against in Finland that played on a bad team and didn't even, they were a role player, maybe like the fourth receiver there. And then they go to a junior college in the States and they're starting when it's like, you know, in that same league, like in that same league, you could have brought like eight of the receivers on the junior college and they would have been superstars where he was, you know, just a very minimal role player. But he ends up starting because he can focus on football finally. And he's never got to do that where we get to focus in middle school and high school. There's always that focus, that practice every day, and things are going to work around football for you.
Right.
And they don't get that. So I think having that understanding of any European player that comes over to the States is their level's gonna raise like immensely. And at the same time, this goes back to American recruiting, knowing that just because you're an American and you're, putting up huge numbers in Europe doesn't mean it necessarily is going to translate to professional football in the States. And so I think that understanding more than anything, as far as outside of that, I mean, I think film's film and you're going to see how guys can play. And I think all teams are there. So I don't know if I have an advantage really on any aspect there or like my name from my time in Europe, getting guys to come here. I mean, honestly, it's going to be tough to get guys to come from Europe to the States to make $400 in a game because they have a full-time job and they have those families. And, if they're making to leave a job that maybe they're making 7 or 8K a month to make half that for a whole season,
Right.
it's a tough thing. So I think a lot of the internationals are going to be Americans with dual passports or guys that have already, moved to the States. Like for us, two of ours that we have is, I say Putu, who's been here at least through high school, and then Callum Sutherland, a kicker from Scotland who played at Oklahoma and Louisiana Monroe. So that's two of our internationals are guys that played, all 4 years of college ball in the States. And, right now the rule is five that you have to have on roster. And so with that five, it's, we're already about halfway there. In the draft, there's going to be 3 rounds of internationals.
Well,
So,
that was going to be the other question. How important is the draft going to be? I mean, obviously, there are certain players that are locked in there.
mm,
So I believe those are essentially guaranteed roster spots, right? That's the whole purpose behind the league getting them
I,
on into the
I
draft.
believe, to my knowledge, for the Europeans, and I could be right, for the European or for the internationals, to my knowledge, it's going to be locked. So if there's 7 teams, there's going to be 21 internationals in the draft. Um, to my knowledge, for the other rounds with the Americans, I don't think that's locked. I think there's going to be more signed for those spots. One thing that's kind of interesting, the path they're doing it is like, okay, we can go out and sign any guy we want, but if he signs for the draft, we can't go after him anymore.
Right.
And so that's something that, you know, it's a way, I guess, to kind of bet on yourself. If you're not okay, you won't give me a shot. Well, I'm going to go to all the workouts that I can, and I'm going to get drafted and prove you wrong, or you're going to want to draft me after you see what all I can do. So, I think it's good that it gives a chance still for guys that you know didn't get picked up by a team or it didn't work out for whatever reason to still get picked. But yeah, I think for the international, to my knowledge, it's going to be 3 rounds and it's going to be 3 guys or every guy should get picked. So I mean I do think that becomes interesting when you look at spots of now there's no rule with how many you play. You know, you could wait and you could sign international guys and just have them on the sideline the whole game. But then that just makes your roster a lot shorter too.
I was going to say that. That's kind of, I don't think you really have an opportunity to really hide with a
Yeah.
smaller roster. I mean, you're playing outdoor ball, so you got 11 men out on the field, both sides of the ball, so to speak.
Mhm.
And you're going to have special teams, defense. So you start to get very limited. So I'm not saying it can't happen. I
Yeah.
mean, I think as a realist, I look at it, it's almost impossible to hide anybody. It
Yeah.
really is. You almost have to you have to make everyone work in some way. Everyone's going to play a significant role one way or
Mhm.
another.
Well, and I think at first, it was we thought it was going to be more Mexican teams than American teams in the league. And yeah, it just didn't work out. And so I think, obviously if you're in a league where you have 6 Mexican teams and 2 American teams or something like that, and then you say, okay, well, at least 5 Mexican players on each team. That just doesn't make much sense. I mean, you want
Right.
to have it. And I'm sure that the Chihuahua team is going to have a lot more Mexican players than the rest of the league. You know, if a Mexico City franchise got picked up now and I was tabbed as the head coach there, then I'd probably sign a lot of Mexican players.
Well, why wouldn't they? They're doing the same thing you guys are doing, bringing their band back together, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
their
exactly.
system, their players. It's chemistry, the whole
Hmm.
thing. You have that short window, 3 weeks, I think, is what training camp is.
Two
It's not
weeks.
even okay, 2 weeks. I
Yeah.
thought it was three, but it might work out. Some teams, right? They have the extra week because Alabama and Tampa are playing a week before everyone else is essentially
Yeah,
kicking
yeah,
off. So
they might get an extra one. And I mean, I don't know if the rules have changed that we could start it early, but for us, I mean, May 15th works fine. First game's June 7th. That gives us 2 full weeks to evaluate guys and see who we want to keep and see if there's practice squad guys we want to keep around. And that was a great thing, honestly, too, about signing so many guys that are in the area is that if they don't make the roster, we can be like, well, you're just 30 minutes away. We have a guy that gets hurt. You've been with us for 2 weeks in camp. You know the system. We'll bring you back. And so I think that's a part of the strategy too. There have been some local guys that maybe don't have the resume or aren't quite as impressive on film as the guy that's out in California or something. But you I mean, again, good players are everywhere, and it's how you fit them into your system and how they all mesh together anyway. So everybody we felt that we've signed, we feel like can really play and has a legitimate chance to make the roster. So yeah, it's just there's a lot of things that you kind of juggle there, and I mean, a lot of guys that we've signed have came from players that we've signed. You sign a guy and he's like, well, hey, I played with this guy, and this guy on this indoor team, or hey, my receiver here in Europe is killing it, and he played at this school and had put up great numbers there. And so that's one thing that, we feel like your best recruiters are always the guys that you already signed.
right.
So, yep. I'd say like one of our guys, Blaine Hoover, offensive lineman from Tarleton State, that he played D line in college, and then he played with me and Coach Mummy, and we coached an All Star game in Mexico City in in December of 22, and we got him to move over to O line for that game because we were quite short on big guys. And we told him, we're like, with your size and the way you move, like you're a prototype tackle. And then he went back and signed with the 49ers as an offensive tackle, and he had never played O line before. He was a tight end, started college as a tight end, then moved to D line. But we signed him, and he played a year at UAW as well, Garnet Word, where we'll be playing our home games. And so, and he's been around through those different. He had so many connections, and I mean, he's probably responsible for like 12 or 13 guys we've signed because we might have signed some guys that he told us about, but then those guys knew somebody, and so you often get this chain effect of, I mean, good players know good players. They work out together, they train together, they played on different teams together. So, that's another reason that we've been able to fill out our roster is that, all our guys know that if they recommend a guy, we're going to take a look at them. And, we feel like we're signing high character guys. And it starts with the guys that we know that we've already been around. And, if they vouch for the guy, our process for the most part has been either I get on the phone with the guy or Coach Mummy gets on the phone, or often it's both of us. He was here in Tennessee helping me all fall at the high school that we were consulting with. And so every day when we would drive to practice and driving home from practices, we would make calls. We'd set up calls during that time and talk to guys. And, there's nobody we're signing that we're not talking with for a good 30, 45 minutes, getting to know them and what their goals are, and telling them, we want to be completely clear that you're not going to come to this league and make, a livable wage. But what you're doing is you're taking advantage of the coaching staff's connections. You're taking advantage of the coaching, of the exposure, playing 11 on 11 outdoor football. And, you know, we tell guys this league is for guys that want to play on Sundays. If you don't, if you're past that, and if you're past that and you just want to play the sport for a few more years, fine. If you're local and that's what you want to do, fine. I mean, we're not going to tell you what to do after this. But, if you're just doing it for fun, like, yeah, go. If there's somewhere else that can pay you better, go do that. Or somewhere else that you're guaranteed a spot or something like that, because it is going to be a lot of competition in camp. And yeah, so a bit different. I know I get a little bit long-winded
No,
here,
that's all
but
right.
I'm trying to be as I try to be as transparent and as open as possible
No,
when we do
I
this.
appreciate it. I really do. And I know I've probably we've taken much longer than I allotted or told you it would be. But just a couple more questions and we'll try to wrap up. So I'm just curious. I know short camp, right? And is there any opportunity for a tune-up game, a preseason game, like against a semi-pro outfit in the area or anything like that that you guys would entertain, or are you allowed to do that if that's something that's even possible?
I don't know if we're allowed, but it's not anything we've ever discussed. So I personally don't. I mean, maybe it changes. I don't know, but I don't see that happening.
Okay. All right. I was just curious if, the National Football League has its OTAs and camp, and then all of a sudden they have their preseason, even though
Yeah.
there's 3 games. A lot of players don't play them anyway. So I just didn't know how that works with the IFA. I know it's a new league, and I know things are determined, but things could always change until things happen. So I
Yeah.
just thought I'd ask. I didn't know if that's something my gut was telling me no, the window's too
Hmm.
short, but I didn't know for certain.
Well,
I
who
just wanted
knows?
to ask.
Maybe next year. If we're blessed enough to, or maybe 26 or whatever. If we're blessed enough to really get things going the way that we're
Right.
hoping to. I mean, I think in the preseason, I don't think more than one's ever needed. Really, I think that it's kind of been when I watch the NFL, I feel like it's almost overkill. It's really, it seems like just a chance to evaluate and let the younger guys play.
Well, right. The NFL, for the most part, it's the vast majority of guys are either fringe players or guys for the fact that they're not going to make it. I mean, there's always
Hmm.
camp bodies, and essentially they're out there playing, and that's how I take the NFL preseason. I mean, it's my take. Doesn't mean I'm
Yeah.
right, but it doesn't really mean anything. And when people are like, "Oh, this team went 3-0 in the preseason," it doesn't. To me, it means nothing because the vast
Yeah.
majority of those players are not going to be in. It won't even be on the practice squad. They're going to end up just totally released and whatnot. So I get it, and I just didn't know if one game would be beneficial to the point of being able to. Do you have shored up what you think you have shored up? Are there key area of concerns? That's the only thing I can see one game being beneficial. It's a
Yeah.
short season anyway, so it would be foolish to have 3, 4 when the season
Yeah.
itself isn't that long.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be against it, but I say I haven't heard any talk of it, and to my knowledge, we're not going to do it at least.
All right. Well, I think I just leave you with one open platform. Is there anything that you think is pretty important to the IFA, the San Antonio team, that you think might be important for potential supporters and whatnot to know? It's kind of your last plea, if you will, if you'd like. I don't know if there's anything out there that's that important, but I just thought it'd be wise to offer.
No, I just I think for players and fans alike, it's just that we want to do something. We want to play. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Whatever the rules are in the NFL, that's what our rules are going to be, because we see it as we're trying to move guys ultimately to the NFL. We see ourselves as a true professional minor league. So, for players, I guess there's no real downfall in signing with the team. If you end up getting a different opportunity in another league in another country, okay, go do that. Um, but to my knowledge, like all the, our staff, and we haven't announced like all of our staff yet, but we got names that are household. We got a few household names that are on staff that have been, Power Five head coaches and NFL coordinators. We got some big names that are coming with us. So I think, not only do you get that coaching, but you also get their connections from all their years in the NFL or the CFL. So I think for the players, it's a great opportunity for them to showcase their ability and kind of like junior college there, they say like bet on yourself. Like you're betting on yourself, you're coming to show what you can do. So I think for players, it's great. For fans, we want to have a fun game day atmosphere. We don't want it to be just like, okay, you're at a program. If you go to a minor league baseball game, there's all kinds of different things going on, in between innings. There's,
Right.
there's just shenanigans all over the place. We want that. That's the atmosphere that we want for the league. We want it to be fun for the fans. We don't want them to have to, pay an arm and a leg to come watch. We want it to be affordable and fun for the fans. We want to really integrate within the communities, get to know the fans, make connections there, and pretty much just build something together that it's, the community, the coaches, the players, the fans, the ownership, all coming together to build, like, I guess, a league together that, in 26, maybe it looks a lot different than 25. But now it's just the challenge of everybody being on board to push that we have a successful 25. Because I think if we can do that, then the sky's the limit and we're going to build something that people are really proud of.
Gotta walk before you run. It's just that simple, right?
Yeah,
Crawl,
it,
walk,
it is, man.
run, and
Yeah. And it's just having that, being open-minded to it. Like, yeah, you're not going to get rich doing this. Not right now, but this might be your best path to have that chance to get rich.
all you can ask for is an opportunity, and that's what is being presented. So, whether it's players, coaches, it's a beautiful thing. I know there's a lot of skepticism out there, around the space in general, but it's an opportunity, and I think that's all that a lot of people are looking for. So when
Yeah.
one presents itself, you gotta do your part and take a good look at it, and not discredit it and ignore it. So,
And I
well,
think,
Stan, well, go
you
ahead.
know, or I was just gonna say, like, something that people can do to help is just, following and sharing on all the social media platforms, the teams, the signings, the players, the league announcements, because I mean it's I'm finding it's really tough to like build followers. Especially when you say like, okay, well, if we were the IFA by ESPN or something like that, then people would say like, okay, that's legitimized.
Right.
But when you're trying to kind of start it up, and there's been so many leagues that I'm sure there's a lot of people that the stigma from the previous failed leagues, they're like, well, I'm not gonna. I think it's gonna be like, well, let's see it happen first, and then I'll actually
I hear a lot of that. I do,
put my
and
support.
I understand.
Um,
But well, why don't you take a moment? I usually do this at the very end, but why don't you take a moment and share where they could follow the team, what the website is, what the different social media platforms that they're on, as well as yourself, so they can stay up to date as to the developments of. And I'm not going to say the team because I'll have to go back and listen to make sure I say it correctly. But the San Antonio IFA team and whatnot.
yeah. Well, our Twitter is probably the most active, or X. I don't know if I'll ever call it Twitter. But it's just IFA San Antonio, and the Instagram is Caballeros underscore IFA, and the Facebook is Texas IFA. And I think that was an issue with some of our things, is we just didn't know what it was a while after we were announced before we had our team name.
Well, because the fans
So
had an opportunity to vote on it. So
yeah. I think that was kind of the delay where you get a lot of different ones there. And I mean, for me, like, really the only social media that I kind of compartmentalize all my social medias, like Facebook is for family pretty much. Instagram's for friends. And then I use like X for pretty much just football related things. And it's just my name at Stan Bedwell. But Twitter, we have our team has something up almost every day on Twitter. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity there for people to get an idea of the type of players we're signing and things like that. And I think after the new year, there's going to be a ton of like organizational news that's coming out. Coach Mummy he got down there about 3 weeks ago, and he's hit the ground running, and he's a general manager as well. So there's so much work to do. I'm going to go down. I'm still in Tennessee right now, but I'm going to spend a good part of December down there working with him, and we'll kind of go from there. But there's just so much to get done, and even though we've been on it a while, it always feels like there's just no time to get it all done. So it's a tall task, but we're handling it well. Coach Mummy's getting it done. Having him down there now is going to pay huge dividends. So we're excited to get going and just hope that we can bring a high level football, but more than anything, fun football, something that people really enjoy tuning into and watching every single week.
All right, sounds good. Well, Stan, I appreciate your time. I know we took way longer than I had initially mentioned to you. So.
I'm sure that's my fault. So
no, it's all good. But it's been a pleasure. Having you on the show to discuss the IFA San Antonio team and your involvement with the team, as well as just the outlook on players. And you're being very realistic with everyone that's tuning in, whether it's players, whether it's potential fans, supporters, of what to expect. And I think that's very important because everything's a little different, right? It's always a little different. You either got big money backing, private owners, hubs, no hubs, in market. I think it's very important to have that vibe. And with the draft and camp still several months off, there's a lot going on. So I really appreciate your time taking a moment to sit down and share that with me and those tuning in. So I just want to say I wish you and the San Antonio team the best, because a launch of any new team, let alone a new league, is a tall task. And I know you guys got a lot of work ahead of yourselves to be able to put together a good product and make it come to fruition. So I'd love to, if you're willing, later on down the line, to have you return, and maybe we could discuss more football and actual progress versus the lead up of trying to get something off the ground.
Yeah, man. Without late spring or so, whenever we're getting going, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
All right, I'd appreciate that. So I know the holidays are upon us, so happy Thanksgiving. I know that we're just about a week change away, so happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You too, bud.
All right, thank you. I am grateful to Stan for not only appearing as a guest, but for giving us more than an hour of his time. I don't think anyone is surprised that Coach Mummy's team will be an air raid team. Yet Stan provided us with additional insight to the team's mindset and preparation for the 2025 International Football Alliance season. Pairing the information Stan provided with what we received from previous guest Ivory Durham and Manny Maxakis, we can begin to see a contrast between the teams. It is interesting to learn how different IFA ownerships and staffs function as they prioritize different matters. If you haven't already, I recommend you take a moment to visit and follow the San Antonio Caballeros on social media. As always, I appreciate those who have tuned in this week and look forward to welcoming you all back next week for an all-new episode of Player 54 Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into today's show. You can support the show and our partners by using code PLAYER54 at checkout at any of the following websites: RoyalRetros.com, where you can save 15%, TrueVictory.com, where you can save 15%, BuckedUp.com, where you can save 20%, ImpactMouthguards.com, where you can save 10%, HobbyArmor.com, where you can save 5%, JustMeatJerky.com, where you can save 10%, Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe and rate Player 54 Podcast on your platforms of choice. Do you have a question or topic you would like to have discussed on the show? Message us via social media or send an email to player54podcast@gmail.com.